The easiest way to describe Totally Killer is by listing all the other movies it calls to mind. Plot-wise, it's a back-to-the-future-style time travel adventure crossed with a Halloween-inspired slasher, all cast in a Scream-lite sense of self-awareness, tonally. Its mashup of comedy and horror lands in the same general area as The Final Girls or the Happy Death Day movies. If its ingredients feel familiar, however, the script by David Matalon, Sasha Perlraver, and Jen D'Angelo injects them with just enough heart and humor to keep them from feeling stale. Totally Killer may not be destined to become a classic in its own right, but the Amazon release is fun enough for a spooky season night in. Its unwitting Marty McFly is Jamie Kiernan Shipka, a stereotypically rebellious teenager whose stereotypically overprotective parents, Julie Bowen and Lachlan Monroe, have more reason than most to be paranoid. 35 years ago, when they were still in high school, 3 of their friends were murdered in a single week. Their worst fears are realized when the still unidentified Sweet 16 killer returns to claim another victim on Halloween 2022. As he sets his sights on Jamie, she takes shelter in a time machine that hurls her back to 1987 via some endearingly chintzy graphics. The unplanned journey inevitably sets up a clash of Gen Z and Gen X sensibilities, and Totally Killer plays out most of the expected beats. Jamie groans at the formerly racist school mascot, cringes at the overtly misogynistic language of her parents' generation, coughs at the omnipresent clouds of cigarette smoke. There are a few clever subversions, like when Jamie unknowingly scarfs half a dozen pot brownies only to find herself totally unaffected because ADS wheat sucks. And the requisite Q&A about the future takes a wry 20s turn when Jamie explains that no, the machines do not end up killing us all a la Terminator or RoboCop, they more just rip apart the fabric of our society through dance videos on TikTok. None of its observations about the generational divide are really sharp enough to draw blood, however. This is neither a Gen Z satire like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies nor a Gen X nostalgia trip like Stranger Things. The film is more about actual blood. Though Jamie spends her stay in 1987 trying to stop the killings before they happen, largely by trying to befriend the victims so she can persuade them to make different choices. She's more successful at changing the details of the murders than preventing them altogether. Totally Killer could probably stand to be a bit gorier, given its R rating, but its spurts of violence are paced at a brisk enough clip to keep a viewer engaged throughout its 103 minutes. Meanwhile, its time travel shenanigans are played with a cheerful light touch. In the present, Jamie's TechWiz best friend, Amelia Kelsey Mawima, works on fixing the time machine so Jamie can come home. In the past, Amelia's even more brilliant future mother, Lauren Troy L. Johnson, does the same. Both are surprisingly blasé about the whole affair. You don't start trying to invent time travel without considering the possibility that people from the future will need your help. Lauren shrugs when Jamie expresses surprise at how well she's taking all of this. As with most time travel movies, the plot mechanics work best if you don't think about them too hard, especially toward the end. They hang together just well enough while it matters to add an extra jolt of urgency to Jamie's timeline-altering quest. And sometimes an extra tinge of poignancy. Totally Killer isn't an especially emotional movie. To the contrary, everyone in its version of the 1980s is so unmoved even by the shocking events unfolding within it that the one time a guy weeps over his girlfriend's death, a newscaster deems the display fascinating. But it locates a beating heart in the evolving bond between Jamie and Pam, Olivia Holt, her mother's younger self. The pair aren't exactly buddies to start. Jamie's horrified to discover that Pam is an archetypal mean girl who thinks it hilarious to trick a social outcast into believing a popular boy likes her. Carrie would have existed by this point, but maybe Pam never watched it. For her part, Pam is understandably weirded out by the stranger barging into her friends' lives out of nowhere, bearing bizarre warnings about impending doom.